Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here. Now I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV for quite some time at this point, and every time we get a new patch, I always see some quality of life update that catches me by surprise, or is something that I've really wanted them to do for a long time, but just kind of figured they'd never get around to it. In the most recent major patch, we got the ability to request repairs from allies, something that was actually possible in 1.x and was removed going into A Realm Reborn. Well, it took us, almost a decade later, but we got that. And since we got that, I realized I didn't really know what else quality of life wise I really needed on a personal note. So I sat down and I just tried to come up with 5 things that I still want to be added to Final Fantasy XIV. Now, I could have easily filled this list out if I was including things like jobs or specific changes, but instead I wanted to focus on things that felt like they were quality of life to me, or things that I think would help the broader spectrum of players in the game themselves. So with that, let's get into my top 5 things I want added to Final Fantasy XIV. Number 1 on my list is the Hall of the Intermediate. This is something I've been advocating for several years now, and all I want is a slightly more advanced tutorial than what is offered from the Hall of the Novice. Hall of the Novice is great for what it is. It teaches new players some specific things about 14, but mostly just stuff that's in case you're new to MMOs as a whole. Whereas I would want something like the Hall of the Intermediate to cover stuff that's more nuanced and more specific to Final Fantasy XIV. Gameplay recommendations for how to use skills without outright saying how you should be playing the game exactly in a certain way. No in-depth job rotations or anything fancy like that. Just cover the effects of healing over time spells, how damage over time skills work in the game, properly using mitigations in order to reduce damage that the entire party is taking, and putting them into a more strict environment. Something that's not difficult, but that, should you fail, results in, needing to do a do-over without resetting the whole instance, I would hope. I just want something a little more advanced. The reason why they've said they don't do anything like the Hall of the Intermediate is because they want the players to learn from other players. That is how you establish kind of playing norms and, of course, as we would call it, meta. But I do think that the game can be more responsible for teaching players proper etiquette within the game itself, without strictly relying on information that comes from other players, especially when there are so many sources and they can be so mixed up. So yes, this is the first thing on my list, and honestly, I'm amazed we haven't gotten anything for this at this point, because I'm not the only one who's been asking for it. Number 2 is adjustable appearances for the party list. The Final Fantasy XIV party list is okay for what it is. However, having played a cacophony of games, I've seen so many different layouts and appearances that I wish we had more control over the party list itself and how it was organized. I know there are certain tools that can help you achieve things like this, but I'm always looking for things to be added on a first party basis. That way, console players can use it, PC players can use it, and it's an established norm that the game is kind of designed around. That could be something like offering the raid plates that we have in 24-man alliances, and something that's like that but made for 8-man parties. It's just a format that I would much prefer, and I'm always thinking it every time I get a 24-man in a roulette, or anytime I go to do a 24-man roulette. I'm sure there are plenty of other customization options they could add other than just changing the actual layout, but I would want to see them make more strides to improve this particular UI aspect. Number 3, fully voiced 8 and 24-man raids. There are so many great stories told across these 8 and 24-man raids, and I just really wish there was more voice acting. I think the main reason why I really feel like I want this is twofold. 1, we got to see voice acted raids back in A Realm Reborn with the final coils of Bahamut, and it really did add a lot of gravitas to the events that were taking place. Number 2 is how much more the game is voice acted as a whole now makes these events a little more standoutish. And don't get me wrong, I played plenty of classic RPGs and RPGs that come out to this day that don't voice act absolutely everything, and I use my imagination to kind of fill in the blanks about how I think the delivery would be. But I'm always looking to enhance the experience more and more. And while the bosses talking in the middle of a raid is cool, it does not substitute for having more voice acting across the major contents that are available in the game. I'm sure we could expand this to more types of content, things like the role quests, the void quests, or things like Bozja or Eureka. And yes, but I wanted to start small here and tackle something that is a little bit more mainstream in forms of content. So one day I hope they commit to voicing full through an 8 or 24 man raid, and they can see just how much we like it. I think another main reason they don't do this is time. I don't think it's they don't want to do it. They've said before that time and releasing the patches in a timely fashion is a big part of it. But I have to imagine with how much we've seen them improve the voice acting total across the entire patch, that there's room to improve it further and take this extra leap in giving us more fully voiced raid stories. Now, my next two are actually kind of in the same vein, and it's something that I get from, well, another popular MMO. Number 4 on my list is account-wide mounts, minions, and achievements. Man, I don't really mind getting some achievements multiple times on different characters depending on what it actually is, but there are just things that if I do want to play multiple characters, this just doesn't feel good. To know that my favorite mount or my favorite minions or something I've worked towards, I just don't have available on other characters, and there's almost no way with most of them I'm going to go out of my way to get them a second time. I would just really like the ability to access a central database across my entire account. Now, maybe you would have to limit this as a compromise to maybe on just a specific data center or even a specific region, given that we have data center travel at this point. But making the game more account friendly would just be a general overhaul I think is nice. I get it. Again, there's reasons why they don't do this. One of the big ones being that the game is not designed to have tons of toons, as we would call them back in the day, or as other games may call them. It is designed around the idea that you can do everything on one character. But that doesn't mean everybody only plays on one character. And so, again, I think we can make strides to improve this particular aspect of the game. And my final one, number 5, is kind of in that vein again. It at least deals with mounts and minions, and is actually the idea that made me want to make this video in the first place. And that is a mount/minion playlist feature. It seems really random, but a few weeks ago I was going through my mounts and I was trying to pick out what I wanted on my favorites list. I had just gotten the new mount from the new Extreme trial. I had a lot of my raid mounts, and I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I could just make playlists to categorize these mounts so that maybe if I want to change things up, I don't have to go and take something out of my favorites and add it back in and then constantly kind of mediate that feature? What if I can make a trial mount playlist, and then I can make a raid mount playlist, and then I can make like a crafted mount playlist, or maybe I just have like a specific theme with my mounts that I want them all to follow, even if they're not from the same types of content. This also then, of course, had to extend to minions. Like, well, if you can do that for mounts, the mount and minion UI is pretty much the same, so why couldn't we do a minion playlist as well? Not as important to me. Mounts really the big thing that inspired this, but I would love to have the ability to do this. You can attempt to do it with macros, kind of, but it really doesn't work as consistently as a built-in feature like this would. So yeah, that's the thing that even spawned the idea of me making this video in the first place, but I think a lot of people are going to hear it and go, you know what? Yeah, I want that too. And those are my top 5 things I want added to Final Fantasy XIV. Again, I left out some other things, jobs, certain abilities, ideas that I have outlined in other videos. I tried to focus mainly on things I thought would make for good quality of life and things that would affect more people than just my own personal desires. Do you have a top 5 list of things you want added to Final Fantasy XIV? Selfish or not, let me know in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. Of course, we'll be posting all the content as we normally do. Anyway, I'll see you all in the next video, and until then, take care.